Azerbaijan is known as like the land of fire and gas. So.
Then you get on a horse in Azerbaijan in a village in the mountains and you're going up a dirt track. That was quite scary.
Baku was nothing like I expected.
Super modern.
Yeah, and again, maybe my ignorance, but I was thinking Azerbaijan is going to have a bit more of a like communist flavor, right? It didn't feel like the stereotypical Eastern European feel.
Those who haven't been, that's a very, very hard image to eradicate.
What's your lasting memory of the trip?
The carpet factory.
I knew you were going to say the carpet factory.
It wasn't the carpet factory, the carpet museum.
The building was in the shape of a rolled carpet. I was expecting us to be able to buy the carpet, but the carpet museum was a museum.
How nerdy is that?
Yeah.
What was your lasting memory?
The burning mountain. I'd never seen like a mountain burn before, like a mountain on fire. My other biggest memory, me having a massive argument about the whole Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh, that was on the first night.
While my black friend
I know that one.
had bailed out.
You defended my honour.
So welcome. Welcome again. This is Bantering Across Borders, and I'm Sarah.
And I am Tony.
And we are two best friends, and between us we've been to over 100 countries. And this series we are reminiscing about our different trips, our random escapades, looking back at the highs and lows, sharing the odd travel tip too, all the while unpacking what it means for us to be friends.
Correct. That's what we're doing.
And today we're talking about a trip that we did in
2018
to Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan. Yeah.
So what was what's your lasting memory of the trip?
The carpet factory.
I knew you were going to say the carpet factory.
No, it wasn't a factory. It wasn't the carpet factory. The carpet museum. There you go. How nerdy is that?
Yeah, exactly. I knew you look like a cool guy, but actually you get enthusiastic about like some of the weirdest things, I have to say. But I also remember that carpet factory more from the building because carpet museum. Because it was the building was in the shape of a rolled carpet.
It was designed by what's her name, Didi Habib or something. No, it was that famous. She didn't. Did she? Zara Hadid. Zara Hadid. Yeah, she designed the museum.
Oh, I thought she only designed the cultural centre. I didn't realise she designed the museum as well.
You may be correct. Anyway, I've attributed lots of things to her now because she's really, really good.
She's dead.
Yeah, well, dead ones are the best ones.
God bless her soul. Mm-hmm. But what were your initial expectations of Azerbaijan?
There were absolutely none. Remember, it was 2018. We had been travelling spontaneously, sporadically, erratically for about 4 years on and off at that point in time. And it was yet another... Oh, what was important about that one? It was the first time we travelled with Escape Travels.
Yeah, so it was actually the first time we travelled with anybody else, right? Because up until
as a group, yes.
Yeah, because up until that point, we'd only ever travelled, the two of us together, and done relatively sort of independent tours. And you're right, this was the first trip we ever did with Escape Travels, and stick around to the end.
You got bored of me, so you thought you needed back up.
Actually, I found the trip, right?
Yeah, you did.
I don't know, I stumbled across Escape Travels and found this trip and decided it would be good for us to go. They specialise in small group travel, and they have been kind enough to give us a discount code for any of their upcoming trips. So stick around to the end and we will share that. So in the last episode we were in Kuwait.
In the last episode we were in Kuwait.
So we're going from one oil country to another.
To another one, which I didn't know anything about before we went. But anyway, so the last trip was to Kuwait. This one was to Azerbaijan. And for those of you who are new to us, there is a whole series of Tony and Sarah's exploits bantering across borders. So we encourage you to listen to any of those that you may have missed. But if you've been travelling the journeys with us, we shall unpack this one for you and let you know all about it. So in terms of Azerbaijan, what was your lasting memory?
So I have a couple of lasting memories. So one is the burning mountain. I'd never seen like a mountain burn before, like a mountain on fire. And although it was only a little fire, I remember it was almost like the mountain had its own campfire, right? It was a sort of a diddy little fire. But I was amazed by that because especially as we were told that in, you know, years gone by, the whole mountain would have been burning. So you can kind of imagine how, you know, back in the day, people would start worshipping these sort of inanimate objects. And then my other biggest memory is me having a massive argument about the whole Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh, that was on the first night.
Yeah, while my black friend
I bailed out on you.
had bailed out and escaped to the other end of the table.
I bailed out on that one.
Drinking rum all evening while I had a very...
You defended my honour.
Very interesting chat with an American gentleman who I ended up sitting next to. So those were my biggest takeaways of Azerbaijan: burning mountains and
BLM.
Strangely, but
yeah, I remember him. He actually, you remember? Well, you probably don't, but he actually sat across from us on the bus all the way back.
I vaguely remember
back to Baku the next day, which was quite awkward.
Well, we had a massive discussion about. I was defending that sports star's right to, you know, take the knee as a peaceful form of protest, and he just went off on one. But anyway, as I said, my black friend decided to go down the table with the other end of the table with the whiskey and the rum.
I have very short shrift with people on that one.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
So, shall we get into it?
Yes, it was a 3-day trip to Azerbaijan. I think 2 or 3 day trip. And we, as we said, we went with Escape Travel, so it was a group. And then we went to, we immediately basically all got into cars and headed off into the countryside, right?
Yeah, it was a drive out of town to a place called Xinaliq.
Yeah.
Yeah, Xinaliq. They probably pronounce it slightly differently.
I also have no clue how you say. I always said Xinaliq as well.
That sounds more European. Yeah. But yeah, so it was Xinaliq village, which, well, we didn't know what we were going to expect when we got there. I mean, it was a journey into nowhereness, but it was quite a nice journey. We stopped off on the way there to have lunch. Yeah,
in this kind of like enchanted forest, if I remember rightly.
It was very pretty.
It was really pretty, and there was sort of, I don't know, I can imagine like that. I vaguely remember like there were unicorns or something in the forest. That's my memory of it. The unicorn and fairy lights in the forest.
Was it Nancy Reagan used to say, "Just say no"? That was it.
That was Grange Hill.
Or was it there as well? Yeah, just say no. Drugs, Sarah, terrible. Or sleep. You should get more sleep.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
You should get more sleep. You
maybe.
Hallucinate. But no, we stopped off into that forest, and there was that big lodge. Hands down. There was a big lodge where we all stopped for lunch. And then we walked off, and there was a waterfall in there as well, so we were able to walk around there. But that was a very, very brief stop. It
was just a short...
on the way there, and then we were heading off into this wonderful village in the mountains.
Yeah, and it was, I think, from memory, it was about like a 4 hours drive.
Yeah.
But as you said, beautiful countryside.
Yeah,
nothing like I'd ever kind of imagined, really. So we were, for those who don't know, Azerbaijan is... because I certainly didn't know before I looked it up on the map and before we went there, but it's a kind of a landlocked country.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the Caspian Sea, but it's bordered by like Georgia, Russia, Turkey, and Iran.
Yeah.
And this village, if I remember correctly, was on the way to Russia, so
Yes.
on the way to the Russian border. And and I always say this wrong, is it the Caucasus Mountains? Caucasian Mountains?
They're not Caucasian. No. That's a description of the people from there. Yeah. Caucasus. I think it's the Caucasus.
The Caucasus Mountains. Yeah. So yeah, this village was the highest, one of the highest villages certainly the highest village in Azerbaijan, I think was the claim, and one of the highest villages in the Caucasian Mountains. One of the highest villages in the Caucasus.
Up there.
Yeah, up there.
Up there it was really high. And it was on the way to Russia, because I remember they talked about the fact that there were, during Soviet times, the Russians used to come over that way.
Okay.
And they used to have issue battles up there as well.
Right, wow.
Yeah, because it was easy to defend because it was high.
Yeah, yeah.
That was an interesting journey to get there, and it was quite, as I said, it was pretty trip. And then we got to where we got to, which was a bit of a shock.
I mean, it's a small. There was only, I think, like 1,000 inhabitants in this village, or less.
I don't even think there was that many.
Yeah,
I mean,
it felt a lot smaller, right?
Felt like 3 farms and and goats, but yeah,
yeah,
it was. Yeah,
and we were staying with the villagers.
we were the lucky
right?
ones.
Yeah, we were the lucky ones, but the group was staying with the villagers, so that it's not like we weren't camping. There were no hotels. Yeah. The villagers had opened up their homes for us as visitors, essentially.
Yeah, and it was Eid as well.
Oh, was it Eid?
It was, yeah, because I think Eid started the next day.
Oh, okay.
Eid started the next day after we arrived, because I remember there was that whole thing the morning when they took us to the museum, and they had to open the museum specially for us because basically well, there wasn't much in the village anyway, but everything that was there was closed.
Okay.
So we were fortunate that they'd opened that up for us so that we could see the artifacts from the history of that village.
Yeah, which was interesting.
And that, yeah, it was very interesting. But again, the night before, obviously, the night when you had your fight. So we arrived at the farm, and we arrived at the farm, and we were taken up to the main farmhouse, and we stayed there.
I wouldn't call it a farm though. It was a bigger house, but it's not like it had a yard, but it didn't have.
Well, that's why I called it a farm.
Okay. This is a city boy. City boy has never been to a farm. A farm has lots of fields and sheep and cows. This was just a backyard.
It was a major backyard with a major backyard outside toilet in it, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. It did have an outside toilet, yeah.
We had an outside structure with a pan in the bottom on the floor.
Yeah, we were all crossing our legs.
Very much so. That was the first time I'd ever taken Imodium.
Oh, yes.
For that journey.
There we go.
For that journey back to Baku, I thought, no, there's no way I'm stopping anywhere on the way back. So that was the first time I ever took Imodium. But no, so we stayed there, and I remember it was really interesting the way that we got to this farmhouse, and in fact, not all of the group went there because some of the group were taken off and they went down the hill to their accommodation.
Right, yeah, the group was split. Yeah.
And we were upstairs, and they'd split it so that the boys, the men, stayed inside the upstairs on the floor in the farmhouse and in the house. Anyway, I'm not going to go far. I won't use the term farm anymore. So the men stayed upstairs, and then the women were downstairs in that one room. I think it had 2 beds, of which you made sure that you got one.
I probably did get it, but I think I slept on the floor though.
Did you sleep on the floor?
Yeah.
Oh no, I think you gave up.
I
your
gave
bed
up my bed for someone who was ill. Yeah.
Very eloquently phrased.
Someone who partied too hard.
Too quickly. So you were downstairs and I was upstairs, and once they'd showed us where our living quarters were going to be, then that was it. Then everybody came down and we stopped to have, food and drinks.
Yeah, I mean, they had this massive sort of like banquet table in the backyard, and we all sat around it, and they served us some delicious meals. Actually, it was really, really nice. Yeah, it was done very nicely.
Very nice, very tasty. More than sufficient for all of the people that were there. And again, as you said, I mean, it wasn't a hotel. It was the villagers who'd opened up their homes to us. And to be honest, I think that they did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
We felt very, very welcomed. And it was really enjoyable. Yeah,
and then the next morning we walked around the village. I think you walked to the top of something. I waved at you from below.
Yeah, no, they took us up. They took us up to the museum.
Yeah, I remember that part.
Yeah. So we went to the museum, and then after we went to the museum, as you say, we walked around and ascended up to some higher parts of the village, which was and it gave you a great view of the valley that the village was in, and that was great. And then we went horse riding.
Yeah, I didn't go horse riding. Yeah.
the royal, we went horse riding. Correct. You and a couple of others said, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And walked back to the village
Yes.
while the rest of us got onto the horses. And
You just went further up, right?
we just went further up. I have to admit, having learnt to horse ride in Hyde Park, which is quite flat and very safe as long as you stay on the Rotten Row, I think they call it. But as long as you stay there, it's quite non-dangerous, apart from if one of the horses decides to roll. And then you get on a horse in Azerbaijan, in a village in the mountains, and you're going up a dirt track. That was quite scary. I have to say that was quite scary. And I was concerned that somebody might have fallen and then we would have had a big problem.
Right.
But it was good to have done it. And in fact, that was part of the reason that the horse trip was quite short, partly because some of you refused to do it and went back to the village, and we didn't want to split the group. And then secondly was because of the fact that it was actually quite treacherous up there.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that kind of trip, like in Guatemala, right, where you get on this horse and it takes you up like the side of a volcano, and all I ever remember is like the ground kind of giving away beneath you.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's not my thing.
I think
if it was a camel, by the way, I probably would have given it a go. I feel much safer on a camel than on a horse.
Yeah, because they're everywhere. You grew up surrounded by them in Hertfordshire, didn't you? They were just everywhere.
It's Buckinghamshire.
Buckinghamshire. I'm so sorry. But anyway, so that's what we did, and then we went up, did the horse trip. Which again, if you're adventurous and you're prepared to risk your life, it's worth doing. And then we came back, and then it was back into the vehicles and heading off to Baku. Yeah,
to Baku, which is the capital of Azerbaijan, and Baku actually is directly on the Caspian Sea, right? So we walked along the kind of the promenade.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we went to the carpet museum. Museum.
We
went to the carpet museum. So what fascinated you so much about the carpet museum? Because I do remember at the time you were like a, I don't know, giggly little schoolboy. And I like carpets, right?
They serve a purpose.
I love art and, handmade stuff. And it was a beautiful museum, but I don't know, Tony gets very, very enthusiastic about things like folk museums and carpet museums.
To be honest, I went with very, very low expectations. Somebody says, this is it. If you don't expect anything, you're never disappointed, are you? But no, that was the thing. We're going to the carpet museum. Ooh, whoop-de-doo. And then you get there, and it was amazing. The craftsmanship that was there. The carpets that were there, where they'd been, some of them they'd made for the mosques.
Right.
And in fact, they had carpets there that they'd made for the Grand Mosque in Mecca.
Yeah.
And they had carpets there that were hundreds of years old, and you could still see the fine workmanship that had gone into the making of them, the different materials they used. And there was that one section, I don't know if you remember it, where there was that one section where they had a whole like settee and tables and chairs and cups and everything that was all made out of carpet material.
Okay, no, I don't remember that.
I sat up there, and they even had a book rack and with books on it that were made out of carpet material. It was just absolutely. I thought it was brilliant.
Amazing. I must have gone off to the gift shop at that stage. Probably. That's what I tend to do.
No, I thought it was. I would definitely go back to Baku and go to the carpet museum.
And by the way, everybody else on the trip really loved that carpet museum as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's. I'm joking about Tony kind of loving it, but everybody was really enamored by it. It was really nice, and we had a guide for some of it as well, right?
Yeah.
Which always helps. I love having a guide to take me around museums because they give you so much more insight into things. So then from the carpet museum, we continued the tour of Baku, and I remember Baku was nothing like I expected because
super modern.
Yeah, exactly, right? I was thinking, and again, maybe my ignorance, but I was thinking Azerbaijan is going to have a bit more of a like communist flavor, right? Because I just associate Azerbaijan with Russia. But actually looking at the history, it used to belong to Iran at one point, even before Russia. But there wasn't, it didn't feel like the stereotypical Eastern European feel that I was expecting, to be honest. It was, as you said, it was very modern. They have all this like beautiful architecture.
Yeah. Modern architecture. I think this is one of the things, particularly for those of us who've grown up, throughout the advent and the emergence of social media now, but previously to that, I mean, we had to watch the news and documentaries if you wanted to learn anything about anywhere. And there seemed to be, particularly through the 70s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, there seemed to be a single view of Russian or Soviet, actually, architecture and Soviet cities, particularly ones that had been, in quotes, occupied, the Estonias, the Azerbaijans, the Central, the Eastern European. And it was very much, you might have a couple of old churches that were still left standing and hadn't been destroyed by the Russian invasion. And then the Russian architecture, which was basically concrete blocks.
Yeah, exactly. It was all
grey concrete blocks.
Big looming slabs of concrete. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think the view is, when for those who haven't been, that's a very, very hard image to eradicate, because this is what you've grown up seeing constantly, repeatedly. And then you actually get to these cities and places like, Tallinn, I've been through Prague, and in this instance, going to Baku. Super modern. Yeah. Super modern architecture, the whole infrastructure, everything is just, you could be at any one of the modern cities or Western cities that you'd expect. And that's what I found about Baku, was that it was, it had a carpet museum and it had the flame, I think it's the flame tower they call it.
So there's 3 towers that each one of them, like each individual tower is shaped like a flame. So then the 3 of them together, because Azerbaijan is known as like the land of fire, land of fire and gas, I think. And what we didn't see, actually, but correct me if I'm wrong, because my memory of this trip seems to be a little shaky. So we never saw the flame towers at night, right?
No.
Because I've seen online in the meantime that those flame towers at night, they actually project kind of orange flames onto the flames. And it becomes this kind of like animated, big, and they're skyscrapers, right? We're not talking small towers. And it's above the city, really. It's sort of a little bit on a hill. So at night, those towers are now kind of lit up orange with the sort of the animation of flame. So that must look amazing. Yeah. I mean, it looked amazing during the day, the 3 towers together. And it really marks out the skyline of Baku. But they were built in 2012, I think. So it's a relatively modern one. We didn't go up them, right?
No, we didn't. No, we did. That's when we were doing our walk around, and that's when we went to the monument for the dead from the 1990 uprising.
Exactly. So the 3 towers overlook the memorial park, which was the only thing in my mind that felt a little bit more sort of communist, because it was a sort of it was a memorial to that time, as you said, the uprising. Yeah. So that was sort of like kind of peaceful garden. Obviously, all the names of people that had lost their lives, but then you had this backdrop of the flame towers, and they also had the eternal flame. Yeah, because I've got this. It feels a bit disrespectful now I say it, but I've got this photo. we started to position Tony in front of the eternal flame so that it looked like he got flames coming out of various part of his anatomies, which is very disrespectful. Now I talk about it.
Maybe we'll edit that out, or maybe we'll leave it in just to show the other side of Sarah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, like you weren't taking part in the whole.
I was following your direction. That's all I was doing. So that was through the daytime there, and then we went back and we went to our hotel.
But we then visited the Zaha Hadid cultural center. Yeah, so that again we didn't go into that, and that's why one regret actually for the trip at Azerbaijan is I think it would have been nice to stay longer because we got a very good view of the city, but we didn't, apart from the carpet museum, we didn't go into some of these areas. But the cultural museum, so the Zaha Hadid building,
it's called the Haja Aliyev.
It's named after one of the former presidents of Azerbaijan, I think. But it's like it's very curvy, which is very typical of her style.
It's like you.
There'll be buildings built in my memory, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it's like a big Stetson, right? Don't you think? Like it's sort of, or is that just me? It looks like a sort of a big cowboy hat that's in the park.
I suppose if you were distorted in your thinking, you could see it. I see what you're saying. Yes,
but it's a very sort of curvy, curvy modern building, and in front of it, there's also a lot of modern art. So there was like a giant, I want to say a giant rabbit. There was a giant sort of red or orange. There was these sort of plasticky, big, sculptures.
Modern sculptures.
Yeah, modern sculptures. Yeah.
And we all took our picture of the I Love Baku. The whole group was around that one as well. So that was nice. That was good fun. Actually, it was good fun.
Yeah, it was good. But that was the end of the tour, right?
That was the end of the tour. And then we went back to the hotel because we were staying the night in Baku. And it's actually quite interesting because I'm really glad we did the tour that way round.
The village first, you mean, and then the city afterwards.
Can you imagine doing Baku first and thinking, this is Azerbaijan, and then going up to the village, which is still Azerbaijan, but it would have been harrowing to do it that way round. Because
they're huge contrasts with each other, right?
Yeah, I mean, the village was rural, basic, country living, and Baku was much more modern. And actually we were quite lucky because when we got to Baku as well, they had that festival on. So where our hotel was in the middle of their food and drink and cultural festival as well. So that was quite good.
The only thing I knew about Azerbaijan and particularly Baku before we went there was that it hosted the Eurovision Song Contest.
That was more than me.
Yeah, so as a follower of the Eurovision Song Contest, so that's the nerdy side of me.
Okay.
So, talking about festivals, they do now host a load of festivals and shows there because, correct me if I'm wrong, but the visa requirements, particularly for people from the GCC, is very accommodating from Azerbaijan. That was also one of the reasons we chose to go, because it was just easy from a visa perspective, and that's the case for a lot of different nationalities, I think. So a lot of people choose to go there. So
it's also symptomatic, not symptomatic. It's also common with a lot of the former Soviet countries as well, is that they are very welcoming.
So this was the first, we said at the beginning, this was the first trip that we had done with a group and not just us individually. So what would you say is the benefit of traveling in a group?
I think you get the opportunity to meet a lot of like-minded individuals.
Yeah.
Particularly on the escape travel ones, and obviously, particularly on the escape travel ones, is you've got a lot of like-minded people from the region who want to use the benefit of being in the region to go out and see different things that you might not otherwise have done. Yeah. Like I said to you before on one of the previous trips, where I said I wouldn't necessarily have gone there, but I assumed it was just around the corner. It's a 10-hour flight in the end, but it's just, I wouldn't otherwise have done that. But you've got a lot of people on there. And one of the great things actually was when you start talking to the people on there, we've been to here and here and here and here and here. And it gives you even more ideas about places to go to.
Yeah, it's very inspiring, right?
It's very inspiring.
Because I think, I don't know whether it was just that particular group, but the people that we were on the trip with, they'd been to some amazing places as well, right? Yeah. So, we were exchanging travel stories. They were giving us tips about different places.
And we're still in touch with a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's the one thing I was going to say about the benefit of traveling in a group. So first of all, everything's arranged for you, right? So
I have you for that.
Yeah, exactly. On our trips, I normally do all the organising, and you're kind of relying on your own intuition, whether you've picked the right, tour guides, picked the right hotels, etc. When you travel on one of these small group travel tours, someone else has taken on that responsibility and has done all the research beforehand. So it's relatively easy. You're just told, okay, have breakfast and meet us in the hotel lobby at 9 a.m. So it's very relaxing from that point of view. And then, as you said, it's the people on the trip that, particularly as a single. So I've done more escape travel trips than you have, I think, because I've done some without you. I've done a few with where I've just gone on my own.
Cut to weeping Tony.
Because as a single female traveler, and actually just as a single traveler, it's kind of convenient to join a group that you're then friends with for that weekend. Now, luckily, with us, we made friends with some of those people that still remain our friends because they come from the region. But even if you don't extend that friendship past that weekend, for me, it was more motivating. What are you laughing at that for? You're going back to the Black Lives Matter guy. But even if you don't remain friends with those people, for that, for those like 72 hours that you're with them, you're at least motivated to go out and do things and see the city. Whereas I have also traveled as a single person on my own. I bought a ticket to Bilbao, for example, and then stayed in the hotel for the majority of the time because I'm just on my own, and generally I'm quite lazy. So that was good as well. But then another question for you, because this is the first time that we traveled in a group. What do you think we observed? What did you observe about me, about my, let's say, travel style, now that you sort of saw me as part of the group?
That's an interesting question, because we've been on a couple of trips, 2 or 3 trips with the group, and again, it depends on who we're with. And I've realised I don't like to share.
I was about to say the same thing, actually. I was about to say the same thing about me. Like, I also don't... I love being in the groups, by the way.
Yeah.
But, so Tony is a very gregarious person. I'm quite introverted. Like, Tony walks into a room and everybody, like, is just... attracted to him, by his sort of magnetism. And so he becomes like this central point that he's making everybody laugh. He's telling lots of tales. And then I'm this kind of, side chick, somewhere sitting in the corner. So I also don't like to share, by the way. And I don't generally like other people. So for me, I love the group trips, but I prefer doing the group trips without you, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes sense. Yeah. It makes sense.
I prefer having our trips, like just for us, because then we've got the, we've got this shared love of the music, and it's just us two traveling. So.
Yeah, and I think that's great as well, because I think that's a great way of describing it. I mean, I don't necessarily feel that magnetism piece that you talk about. I don't like Alanis Morissette says, "Why are you so terrified of silence?" I don't like being in a group environment where it goes very, very quiet and no one knows what to say and everybody's embarrassed to start a conversation. Yeah. So generally I'll just talk nonsense, or ideally say something controversial to stimulate angry debate. Hopefully debate, not argument. But I'll do that. And as you say, that gets people going, and people automatically assume I know what I'm talking about. So that's why they might gravitate towards me. But again, as I said on previous trips, with you, we can sit and we can travel and talk and talk and talk. You talk, I listen. But we can talk and talk and talk and then just go silent for hours.
Exactly. What we'll have to do is to have Escape Travels arrange a private tour.
They do all the work and we just turn up.
Yeah, that's the ideal scenario, right? That's the perfect scenario. Yeah.
If you had to think back now and have one image.
So my one image would be the Burning Mountain, I guess. That was... you don't remember it, do you?
I do. And in fact... I was looking for the T-shirt because I found a T-shirt that I was wearing at the time, but it was a lot less snug when I was wearing it then. I seem to have put a midriff on since there. But no, I mean, I remember it. I mean, because if you remember, there was actually 2 sides. So you came up to it and there was like a wall of fire. and then you could actually go up and stand on the top.
Yeah.
And I've got pictures up of us standing on the top where I, as I say, look a lot slimmer.
Yeah, me too, by the way. But it was like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
June the 14th.
Oh, it's very precise.
Yeah, it was June the 13th, 14th and 15th.
Why would you remember that?
Because it was 10 days before my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was supposed to go home.
So were you doing a countdown? It's like,
no, well, actually,
10
no,
days to
because
my birthday.
I was
10 days to 9 days to my birthday.
I'm such a child. I was supposed to have gone home that weekend.
Oh, I see.
And stayed there through to my birthday, but actually I didn't.
Okay.
I went to Azerbaijan because somebody said, let's go to Azerbaijan. And so off we went. So if there's one thing you could change about the trip, what would that be?
The one thing I would change would be just being there for longer, actually. I think there was a lot more to discover, particularly in Baku. And I would have stayed another couple of days. It's a very easy trip from Dubai, actually. So it's probably worth going back there. So that's all I would change, really.
Okay.
And you, what one thing would you change?
I would leave more time for the carpet museum.
Actually, the one thing that surprised me talking about carpets, because I was expecting us to be able to buy the carpets, because like when you go to Turkey and Istanbul or practically anywhere else in the world, like Morocco, they're always like, oh, we're going to a carpet museum, and you end up and it's really a carpet shop, and they're just trying to sell you the rugs, which I like those rugs, so I'm fine with it. I normally have bought quite a few rugs from random places around the world. But the carpet museum was a museum. There was no place to buy the carpets, right?
There was no sales.
Yeah, no sales.
Which is very, very good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We did mention that we would give a discount code.
So yeah.
So we're not sponsored. Just so everybody knows, we are not sponsored by Escape Travels. See, I can just about remember their name. We're not sponsored by Escape Travels in any shape or form, but it's just something that we've used ourselves, and subsequently we thought we might, give them a bit of a plug. And what they've said is they'll give a 5% discount for anybody who books through their website, which is escape-travels.com. And the discount code you should use if you want to book one of their trips is K for Kilo, F for Foxtrot, Y for Yankee, E for Echo, P for Papa, L for Lima, Q for Quebec, P for Papa. So that's KFYEPLQP.
Perfect.
Okay. So that's the trip to Azerbaijan. I hope you enjoyed hearing about our time in the village.
Do tell us if there are other places that we should have visited or that are worth going back to, or if you've had other experiences.
Well, we may have visited already, and you might want to hear our view, because between us, we've been to over 100 countries, independently or together. And so that was Azerbaijan. Our next trip is going to be to Sudan.
Sudan, yeah.
And that will be the last one in this series. We've got another series coming up in the summer, so we'll tell you about other places we've been to. So that was Bantering Across Borders with me, Tony.
And me, Sarah. And thank you for spending the time with us.
Look forward to seeing you in the next episode.